What's up, Basketball Brain fans and members? I'm outside again, so you might hear some background noise or a little bit of wind. I hope that doesn't bother you too much. Today I want to talk about the 10,000 hour rule and flow. More specifically, I want to talk about the myths surrounding them. You know, they're very popular concepts, but you got to be aware that some people who talk about these things have never actually read the literature on them, and they're headline readers. So they're just going around talking about, you know, just do something for 10,000 hours and you'll be a professional athlete. The truth is, that's not accurate. And there are other people going around saying you always got to be in the flow state. And the truth is, that isn't accurate. In fact, what I want to talk to you about is what it means to actually get better and how it looks when you're an expert at something, what the actual day-to-day process looks like. And the first thing you want to know that when you're practicing, you have to be very exact. You need to know exactly what you want, like short term and then long term, of course. You want to know what you want in a training session, you want to know what you want a month out, and you want to know what you want long term. So if you're working on your form, for instance, and you want form like Klay Thompson or Steph Curry, you need to know that. And going in, there might be a certain aspect of your shot you're working on. For instance, getting your elbow in, or a certain tempo, or it might be your guide hand. You know, when I was working on my shot, when I was younger, like in 9th grade, I had this funky shot. My left hand was on the front of the ball and I slowly moved it. It was ugly. It was ugly. It wasn't Lonzo Ball. Actually, it might have been Lonzo Ball level. Okay, that, to be honest with you, it might have been that bad. I always thought, on an aside, like, you know how in China they bound the feet of the women and like shrunk the women's feet? I feel like LeVar Ball did that to Lonzo Ball in a way, kind of, you know, malformed him while he was bringing him up with that jump shot. I'm pulling for Lonzo. I'm not that guy. I think he has a lot of talent, but I do think he needs to fix his shot. Anyways, back to the conversation. My guide hand was a problem. So I'd say for about 3 to 4 months, all I did specifically was work on getting that guide hand on the side of the ball and make sure it was kind of releasing almost when a rocket lifts off and the support arm falls away. It was, you know, I had these visions, and this is the second thing. You need to find somebody who can help you, a coach or somebody who can give you feedback in the moment, shot to shot almost, or, you know, at least session to session. It's very important. You can also use a camera. You need to film yourself constantly so you can get feedback. You need to look at what you're doing. You need to have a model that you're looking for, right? You need to have somebody, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, film yourself from a certain angle and then find footage of Klay Thompson from the same angle. Go back and analyze. And then go in the gym, shoot again, and keep tweaking and tweaking. So the whole thing is every rep you're focusing, you're making these tiny little adjustments. Then that leads me to flow. Listen, most players don't enjoy what they're doing every day, but they still do it. They don't get in flow, especially at the beginning. Maybe about 30 minutes in, when they start getting the workout going, you get into flow. But if you cannot start practicing even when you don't want to, you're going to have a hard time getting better. There are no great players that wake up every morning and go, oh my God, I can't wait to do this. Some days you feel that way, a lot of days you don't, and that's where you gotta activate your willpower. You gotta think about your long-term goals, and you got to think about the competitors. You have to use a little bit of fear and paranoia to motivate yourself to go out there and practice when you don't want to. So there's this myth that you're always going to be in flow, floating around, you know, in the zone. That's not true. And anybody who tells you that is not an expert at what they do. Eventually you get to a state where you start to enjoy it. You start to enjoy things more and more, because you're good. So you don't have to spend as much time on the fundamentals. You can start working, you know, you can get right into a more interesting workout. But if you're young, you're going to be spending a lot more time on the fundamentals, and that's good. You got to make it fun. The other thing is time. Look, you're looking at 3 to 5 hours a day working on your game if you really want to be a great player. That's just the way it is. It's like 2-a-days during football season or basketball season. You wake up in the morning, workout, and then at night you work out again. You need to be able to focus. So this isn't like a thing where you can be, it's better to go for, like, you know what I do. Here's what I do every day. I have a timer. It's called tomatotimer.com or something. And I set 25-minute segments. So I work very hard for 25 minutes. I'm completely focused on the task at hand. I take a 5-minute break. In the 5-minute break, I might make a phone call. I may watch something funny on YouTube. I typically watch something, you know, like some comedy shows on YouTube, and then I go back to it. The research has found that, you know, you go 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, you're going to be able to focus better session to session. So you have to be able to focus, and it shouldn't be comfortable. So you have to be pushing yourself. You can't just do what feels good. If you're comfortable in a workout, you're not doing it right. If you're not a little bit upset about the fact that your shot's not getting better because you're trying to tweak it, then you're not doing it right, you know? And then even when you get to a point where you're very comfortable with your form, guess what? There's still that tension there to maintain the form. So it's still not comfortable. Once you get to the top of the mountain, you got to stay at the top of the mountain. But it is fun in a way, you know, because you're doing what you love, and I always relate it to mythology. If you guys have listened to this, you know, when a hero's going on a journey, he goes through a lot of crap to get there. His training sessions aren't fun, but he knows what he's becoming, and that keeps him going. And he's also thinking about his enemy. You're always thinking about the person you're going to have to beat. When Karate Kid is training, he's thinking about the guy he has to beat. He also wants to do it for himself, but he's a little bit paranoid. He's a little bit, you know, he wants to work harder to get better. And of course, this has to be consistent day in and day out, and a lot of repetitions. It's not just playing pickup games. We're talking about practice here. You know, we're really talking about alone in a gym or with a coach or training. You know, like, you imagine if you just went out and brawled in this, like Conor McGregor, all he did was go out and pick fights with people. Would he be the MMA champion? No. He's in the gym alone, doing a lot of fundamentals, and then he fights people who he can practice those fundamentals on. But I would assume that most of his sparring is probably 25% of his training regimen. 75% is just technique work. You know, so that's very important. And surround yourself with people who are interested in this. Know what your competitors are doing. Make sure they're pushing you a little bit, and surround yourself with people who are also dedicated to deliberate practice. I mean, a long time ago, it was found, like when sports psychology first began, that if you run beside somebody, you run faster. I mean, this was like from the inception of psychology. They found that if you have somebody beside you, you tend to perform a little bit better. It brings the best out of you. The root of the word compete, I remember when I was like 15, I listened to Tony Robbins and he said this, the root of the word compete or competition is to conspire together. So the two of you work together to bring out the best in each other. And let's be real here. You know, professional athletes usually have these resources around them. So my dad has a sign in his basement that says, "Don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can do." I want to tweak this a little bit. I tell this to everybody. Don't let what you can't afford stop you from what you can afford. What you can afford are online training programs, online coaches, and maybe you'll find somebody you can afford to go see once in a while, face to face and in person. You can't let a lack of resources or money stop you from getting the training you need. I didn't. I read a book when I was in high school. I had nothing else, and then some guy showed up, very nice guy, he used to rebound for me all the time when I was in the gym. Helped immensely. He really did. But I would say 99% of what I did was just using books, and at that time there was no internet, so it was just books. That's all I used. I read books and I did what they said. I guess some books on tape too, and some audio programs, but don't let, you know, a lack of resources interfere with your ability to become what you want to become. You are capable, you're absolutely capable of changing everything about your game. You can do it. It's entirely possible. There's studies, for instance, in the taxi cab drivers in London. It's a famous study. If you ever take a psych class, it'll be in there. London has this really tangled web of streets, and they studied the brains of the taxi cab drivers before they started studying the maps, and then after. And after they had studied the maps, areas of their brains, particularly the hippocampus, had grown more robust, almost like a muscle. So your thoughts and your training can change your brain. It can change your physical abilities too, like the strength in your right arm. If you're a right arm shooter, is going to go through the roof. The dexterity in that hand is going to go through the roof the more you practice with it. So your thinking and your practice can change your genetic. Will it take 10,000 hours? Probably more if you're going to, you know, play professional or D1. If you only want to be good at a certain aspect of the game, like dribbling, probably less. But if you want to be an all-around player, it's going to take a lot of time. 10,000 hours is sort of an arbitrary number in a lot of ways, but it's a good estimate. It's a good estimate. It gives you an idea of how much work you're going to put in if you practice in the way that I just said. And this is, you know, there's a ton of research by a guy named Ericsson who did most of the research on what is called deliberate practice. He studied high performers in music and chess, etc., and this is what he found. And, you know, as I was reading his studies, I was just nodding my head. Well, duh. You know, like, you never look in science. A lot of the times what we're trying to do is confirm our common sense and then find the holes in our common sense, or the parts of our common sense that are lacking a little bit, or you know, even within common sense there'll be areas that are counterintuitive. You would think it'd be easy to get the flow every time if you're chasing your passion. Well, it turns out that's not true. I'll tell you one more thing. When they interviewed the violinist at this very prestigious school, I believe in Germany, they found that the violinists who were the best, the top of the class, were the ones who enjoyed practice less. The ones who loved their practice because they weren't pushing themselves and they were just playing the songs that they liked to play, probably, you know. They weren't trying new things. They enjoyed practice more and weren't as good. The people who were good enjoyed practice a little bit less. So there's a lot of myths out there about what makes you a great, you know, a great performer, a high caliber performer. Make sure you get the real deal, the real stuff. And from all of my experience, as well as current research backing it up, this seems to be what it takes. This is Dylan from BasketballBrain.com. I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. Check out the full Basketball Brain program. It's really awesome. It'll help you a ton. It's not just motivation, it's actual drills you do. BasketballBrain.com, we're dedicated to your greatness.